Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Thursday, February 12th. Derek Van Riper, Saris, Trevor May here with you. We made it against all odds. Spring training has begun. Some guys don't have the right bags, though, Trevor. What kind of crime is that to carry an old team logo bag to your new team's first day of spring training?
It's a fireable offense. I'm surprised he's still on the team.
Yeah.
It is the most normal thing ever. Anyone who's coming and joining a new team is wearing, or probably has their crap in their old bag. These bags are uniquely sized for baseball. Like there is no there are no other type of bags that are big enough to have all your stuff, especially for showing up for spring training when you're moving your entire life across the country most of the time. And it's funny. This is a Mets guy going on in the Mets who has like 8 different players. The other 7 guys probably all had their old bags too. But yet suddenly we're only talking about one of them because I think it has something to do with the bag that he had and what team he used to be on. It's silly. It's silly, stupid, and spring training's here. We don't have to make up things to talk about it anymore. We can actually just talk about baseball.
I'm glad that Brent Rooker's out here showing everybody, the right way, because he pointed out this is not a big deal. And he also pointed out that nobody can gain 20 pounds of muscle in the off season, which was fact checked by Lance Brazowski, who checked with his top trainer and said that you're capped at about 2.5 pounds of muscle per month if you're trying to add muscle. So, I mean, it could be water weight, could be anything, but it's probably not muscle weight if they're reporting 20 pounds. But I will say the thing that makes me the most mad about right now is that best shape of its life and new pitch is losing. It is losing to, I had surgery and this ended up being a bigger problem than I thought. So I'm not excited about that. Right now, I'd rather be hearing a lot more about, 20 pounds of muscle and, some new trick pitch than anything else. So last year, we were talking about the kick change, and before that, it was the sweeper. And instead, now it's all about hamate bones.
Well, fortunately, no new broken hammates that we know about, at least at the time of this recording, just the first 3 of the year that we discussed on the Wednesday episode. But yeah, gaining 15 to 20 pounds of muscle does seem impossible. I know the old adage, muscle is heavier than fat, is also ridiculous because 1 pound of muscle will weigh as much as 1 pound of fat because they're both 1 pound. I think it's that muscle is different in terms of its density. So the way it looks obviously is going to be different, but the actual weight is the same. So, pound of feathers, pound of bricks, that sort of thing applies here too. We do have another injury to pass along, so we'll get to some news. We'll talk about some new pitches that we have heard things about over the course of these first few days at camp. We'll talk about some things we're excited to see over the course of spring training. Try to get caught up on a few transactions that have slipped through over the last couple of days as well. The big injury news is the Rangers' top prospect, Sebastian Walcott, is likely to miss most, maybe all, of 2026 due to a UCL tear. I think the most likely scenario for Walcott to play in the big leagues this year was going to be later in the season anyway, maybe like an August sort of call-up. Now, if he's playing at all in August, it's probably rehabbing and working his way back. Maybe we'll see him in the Arizona Fall League. So just kind of a bummer to see one of the game's best prospects going down with a major injury. The more transactional thing that I think we should talk about is Chris Bassitt. He goes to Baltimore. And I did see the report that they're considering a 6-man rotation, which makes sense with some of the depth options they have, with Kyle Bradish going through his first full season since having Tommy John. We, of course, saw him at the end of last year. Bassitt got a year, $18.5 million. He's there for bulk mostly, right? 170 innings or more in each of the last 4 seasons. We saw him in the bullpen for the Jays throughout that postseason run last year. But how much does this elevate the Orioles rotation in your eyes,
I think it's good for them to get, innings like this. I think Bassitt's an innings eater. I don't know that, he necessarily needs to start a game in the playoffs. But I'd say like Bradish is a definite in the playoffs. I'm guessing Rogers is probably. So there is sort of the game 3 starter is an open question for them. Do they need to go to a 6-man to get Dean Kramer in there? They said some really nice things about Cade Povich in a recent media appearance, suggesting that they think that he could throw 170 innings and break out this year. So I don't know I don't know that, like, with the 6-man, some of it's like who are you getting in there and who are you taking starts away. So with this, you'd be taking starts away from Kyle Bradish to give them to Dean Kramer. I don't know if that's the best move.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting. Kate Povich would be then 7th on this.
Right. So, yeah. So like,
chart.
why'd they say that and then sign Bassitt? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think this probably counts out Gallen at this point. So I anywhere Chris Bassitt goes, I think he's going to make it that team. Give them a lot of. He's just kind of he's an innings eater. He'll do whatever you need him to do, and he's a gamer. He'll just say yes, give me the ball, and he's a veteran, and he brings the energy. Like, he's going to be there, sitting there talking pitching with all those guys the whole time. They've when they've had their last couple, with last year notwithstanding, when they had their veteran guys who were not necessarily role players, but they weren't like the studs. They were just like anchoring maybe the back end of the rotation or the bullpen or something. They were the best version of themselves. So hopefully he can fill that role a little bit. And having depth is great. But Bradish he's got the best stuff. I think he's the number one best stuff. Even more so, I know Rogers had an incredible year last year, but like stuff wise, they're really not that comparable. Rogers has been hyper consistent. And I would take Bradish in game 1, but like, we missed an entire year, finished last year, didn't throw a ton. So I think that the depth and the guys with the ability to stay healthy, because they've been hurt by injuries, quite a bit. And they need to avoid that. And he's a pretty good, I think, option there. So I like that signing, but it is interesting. We're going to go to a 6-man rotation, because then now even we're like, Bass can throw over 107 innings. Well, he's going to throw 140 now. So like, that doesn't really solve that problem. It is interesting. What do you do with Dean Kramer? Because he's kind of a 5-starter and hasn't really.
I mean, he has an option, but he's been basically a 4.1 ERA guy for 3 years in a row. Like, he's been pretty steady. Pretty
steady, exactly. He's a solid starter, but like, it's maybe a slight cut above like a Kyle Gibson type, but he's that type of not a ton of swing and miss, kind of trying to keep guys off the barrel. And when things are going poorly, he's getting hit pretty hard. Like, those type of guys tend to not be the norm anymore. And I mean, on the team before they had Bassitt, that was great. That was something that would be really helpful. But I don't know. He might be like 5B at this point in that rotation.
Yeah. Among the guys that has options left, though, despite being 30 years old. So Tyler Wells has options. They can use him as a long man. They got a lot of different things they can do. Plenty of depth now, at least in Baltimore. But we await the decision from Zach Gallen. I'd imagine within the next few days, Zach Gallen finds a new home somewhere. Talked about the Atlanta situation maybe being a good fit for Bassitt on Wednesday's show. Maybe they swoop in and get Gallen because of that injury to Spencer Schwellenbach. Max Muncy gets another extension from the Dodgers. I feel like we're going to be talking about Max Muncy adding 1 year to his Dodgers deal for another 5 years. 2027 is going to bring $7 million for a base salary. There's also a club option for $10 million in 2028. But I don't know. I'm just not surprised, right? Every time you can extend him for a little bit less than you did last time, it seems like a smart deal for the Dodgers, because he keeps hitting as long as he can see. Once he got his vision corrected last year, he looked a lot like typical Max Muncy again.
It's wild, man. I would say, like, at 35 years old, why extend him? Just let him play out his season and see how it's going to go. It could collapse at any time. Then again, it's the Dodgers, so even if they're wrong, and this costs them $10 million, then they'll laugh that off. And if they're right, it ends up being a potential bargain, because he's been, basically a 2.5-win player for 3 straight years. He's been really remarkably consistent. I think of a little bit of Joey Votto when I look at Max Muncy, because Joey Votto said, I want to do what's going to, consistently, like, keep me at my head above water, like, keep me valuable the longest. And that was why he didn't swing at anything outside the zone. And that's why, he did certain things. And Max Muncy just hits the ball in the air and doesn't swing at balls. And he's found a way to continually be valuable, despite some flaws in other places. Will he, continue to be okay at third? Where will they put him defensively? Ohtani's chewing up DH. These are questions the Dodgers don't worry about too much, I guess.
I love it. He's going to be there until he's done.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for. If you're going to be that type, if you're going to be the type of player, maybe where there's other stars on the team, you come up in big spots and you get the job done. I think hitting that homer in Game 7 is probably the most underrated thing he did last year. That people don't really talk about the Miggy Rowe one a lot, but he set it up. He does that type of stuff, and they're just going to keep paying him for that. And he plays good defense. And he's locked in, and he's on top of things. He knows the situation. He's a veteran guy. He knows their system. He's just going to go straight into being a coach probably for them. That's just how it's going to work. And if you can get tenure with the team where they're like, hey, as long as you want to come back, we have a spot for you, whether it's a player or not, then that's the dream for a career baseball player. So I anticipate that from Max Muncy. It seems like he's kind of setting himself up for that kind of stuff too. So great for him. I mean, he's not a liability. And then when he becomes one, I'm sure they'll be like, hey man, you're a liability. And be like, yeah, you're right. And then they'll just figure something else out.
And I don't know, do you think he's cost himself a lot of money doing it this way? I mean, I don't know maybe a little bit, but a player like this, what you're talking about is worth money. Right? That's worth money down the line. You might have a job. You might go up into the booth, right? There's all sorts of ways that this works out well for him. And then on top of that, I'm not sure, it would have been, I don't know how much more he could have squeezed out of it because of the things I was talking about. Platoon corner infielder who's 35, how much is the market, what we just saw, Eugenio Suarez, that's 1 in 15, right? And Muncy took 1 in 10. So do you leave $5 million out there? And is that worth it to be comfortable? And, yeah. So
well, if you're playing a long game and you want to keep winning and the other factors are in place that he cares about, then that difference doesn't really matter. At a certain point, you just say, I'm making enough money. It just doesn't matter. Kike Hernandez is back too. Just saw that one fly by from our buddy Fabian Ardaya, 1 year, $4.5 million. I think now that camp opens for the Dodgers on Friday, they can move someone to the 60-day IL and not lose someone off the 40-man.
It might be him. He had surgery.
Might be him. Okay.
Right? Can you do that? Sign someone and just put them right into...
Yeah. You can sign them while they're on the IL. Just transfer them over to yours. That's happened
One other
before.
thing. Here's
in trades that way, yeah.
So the MLB owners are having some meetings right now, and they have voted to enforce a rule requiring base coaches to remain in their boxes until the pitch is thrown. According to Jesse Rogers, the goal is to limit pitch tipping and sign relays that have grown more prevalent in recent years. How long do you guys think this enforcement will last? Are they serious this time?
The whole get in the box thing is almost a meme at this point. I don't know. Have you ever watched coaches and looked at where the box is during a game?
Nowhere close.
They're wasting time painting that thing on. I don't even know if they paint it more than once over the year because no one's touched it. So
if it rains, maybe.
It's silly. Here's what it'll be enforced until umpires have to stop play to tell guys to move, and then it starts to stutter. They'll just stop doing it. Because that's the most important thing. You can't make it a scene. It's going to be a scene every time they have to stop or tell someone to move, because the guys they'll be like, hey, move during the plate, and they'll be like, what? And
then he's like, stop, time, get back in the box. And then it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Also, do you feel like anyone is truly bothered by the status quo here? Has it gotten to the point where anybody playing the game is that upset about the pitch tipping
Somebody
and
must
sign
have
relay that
complained.
comes from it?
Somebody must have complained, right? How does this arise to the moment that it's in the owners' meeting? Somebody brought it to the table, right?
Yeah, there's been some probably interior or internal conversations. I know there was a whole thing about Jesus Lazario was tipping and they were getting tips off him from everywhere. So there was some things you could get probably straight on or behind him, and then there's some stuff you get from straight behind or straight forward, and that could get really frustrating where you're like, come on guys, you don't get to keep moving just can there be a line to where I know we're good? This is
I know where you are, where I am.
You can't just keep adjusting and going farther and farther, but I can't do anything else. That's annoying, and I understand that. And there's probably a few people that were doing it. And then I think there's probably a little bit of when Judge was just telling them people like what was like just blatantly telling people they're
Oh,
coming.
they're like the Yankees, like
it was just kind of didn't look. It's part of the game, but it's like with all the stuff around cheating and stuff over the last 10 years, it's like we would be like the league's probably like we would be a little bit happy if you guys like weren't so like we know what's coming, because it feels like the integrity of the game is being undermined, even if it's really not. It's just not a great look, and I agree with that. Like that's kind of the reason that the guys used to throw inside and do it, because then that's a spectacle too. So even the reaction was also fun to watch. So like, but it was also like behind the scenes, you were trying to be sneaky, and so it was a little bit of a chess match that the public didn't know about. Now that it's super public, people are like, "Oh, where's the line? Why do we care about sticky stuff if they're just giving away?" Like that's constantly happening, and they're probably just sick of it. That's most likely what happened.
So you don't like seeing runners leading off second doing jumping jacks out there just to show that they got something?
I mean, you can just be subtle.
Yeah, just
like
be
it's not.
Tactically, it just makes more sense to be subtle so you don't make it obvious to the other team that you found something, unless you're playing the mental game that we've talked about before.
Then there's the mental game.
You have something. So
yeah, and then there's that. And then they want to actually rattle the pitcher because he's like, well, I can't fix things in real life. And they were doing it to, I think it was the Yankees were doing it just blatantly to Luzardo. Or no, the Red Sox were doing it blatantly to Luzardo. And he couldn't fix the thing he was doing. He was tapping and showing the glove. He couldn't do that in real time. He's like, this is something I can't stop doing. It's like a timing thing. And he was so frustrated. And they're like, oh, he's so frustrated. Now we can just be like, yeah, we still got it. And it just made it worse and worse and worse. And he had a couple just horrible blow-up innings. So that's partially what was going on there.
One thing that sucks, though, about this is that I think that the return of the running game has been good for baseball. It's been fun to watch more stolen bases, and particularly stolen bases of third, I think for some reason are pretty exciting. There's something about you can see more of it, I think, because he's leading off of second base behind the pitcher, so you can see more. There's more view of that happening all the way through. I've enjoyed there being more running in baseball, and so I hope this doesn't, reduce the amount of running in baseball. Yeah, I guess that's it.
It has been a nice addition so far. Let's move on to some things we're normally looking for this time of year. Let's call it New Pitch Watch, and it sounds as though Garrett Crochet has a new changeup. Trevor, what do we know so far about Crochet's new changeup? He had one he threw like 4% of the time last year, so it was a very, very long tail offering that wasn't a big part of the equation. What's new about what he's trying to do with that pitch this year?
Well, he is reportedly, and this is also from Lance Radowski with his analysis of him seam shifting. It's like a split change that he's able to seam shift, and they have some slow motion edgertronic. So before, he's always like thrown a circle change. He always does the circle every time he's thrown a changeup. And before, he was able to slow it down a lot. It was like, he's a guy who throws high 90s up to 100 regularly, 97 to 100 consistently. And this changeup was like mid 80s, which is a good discrepancy. But what was happening was, even if he gripped it with a two-seam grip or whatever, it would not move very much. It'd be a lot of difference in velocity. And that's just not his game. And it was identifiable, and guys wouldn't chase it either. And then I think there was a feel. He just wasn't throwing it where he wanted to. It was off the plate a lot. And so it seems like he has shifted, and he stayed with this circle. And that's something I did too. I always grew up throwing a circle change. It was just comfortable in terms of controlling the ball. But what he's done is he moved the circle over to this side of the ball, and then the horseshoe is up.
So it's almost two-seam versus four-seam idea or something?
So like when I threw my seam shifter, I would be on these seams too. So it's like using this top horseshoe coming towards the body to mess around with the grip, kind of puts it in a seam shifting wake position. But then what he did is he split it, and he's hooking this seam, and then he's doing a circle, and he's kind of like moving it, like instead of being straight on, he's like moving it off over here. And so basically what's happening is, because he lowered his arm slot, he's on the side here. It's coming out here, and then this horseshoe is just staying on top of the ball, and it's kind of spinning sideways. And slowly, what happens is the air hits the top of the ball, and so he's got way more depth. So he's not getting a bunch of run. He's just getting to go straight down. I've heard people talk that he was constantly asking Chapman what he was doing with his, and then Colton Wong, who evidently taught Chapman his. So he's like, hey, what are we? So he just messed with him. He threw 2 different grips last year. He just kind of gave up on it when he realized that his cutter sweeper 4-seam was plenty. But like, you come back spring training, you want to have a new one. So by all accounts, the movement profile on that is great. And he's throwing consistently like over the plate on the bottom of the zone or below. That is the problem he had with it before. It just was constantly off the plate. And he works in so much to righties. He works glove side so much with everything that it's just a pitch that looked so much different than everything else. Now he can throw this as if it's going into a righty and it just drops to the bottom of the plate. That could be a weapon that is unlike anything else he has, especially if splitter grips tend to be harder too. So if he's throwing it like 90, 91, 92, that's kind of more in his realm. It's not a pitch that's such an outlier.
So I've heard it described as a splitter, and you're falling into calling it a splitter, but it's somewhere in between, right? Because I talked to him last year, and he said that throwing the splitter hurt, and so he couldn't ever throw a splitter. So I think the difference is how split maybe your 2 fingers are. Like in this one, he's kind of, by taking this finger off, he's splitting more his middle fingers. So maybe that doesn't hurt as much, or.
Yeah, I mean, that could be it, or he could be just naturally feels more comfortable throwing with those fingers, and he just needed to get in a grip where it would spin the way he wanted it to, so it'd move the right way. So it's basically like, I have a grip that I'm comfortable throwing, or like I have elements of grip that I'm comfortable throwing. Maybe it's just ball orientation, and that is kind of what pitch design is. It's just finding the correct ball orientation to get it to move, and it's just iteration over iteration, just throwing it on TrackMan and seeing what inevitably catches the air current that you want it to catch.
Yeah. And finding something that you don't have to manipulate, right? Like when you said that the splitter kind of hurt for you, that was because you changed the way you threw a little bit.
Yeah, you have to. That's just human nature, alligator brain. You're a 10-year-old. Like, you think sliders slide, so you try. What would I do to? I just rip it through and try to get it to slide. Like, that's not how you throw sliders. It's not so literal. And so we kind of naturally, like, your body just goes, oh, I want a splitter. Now I need to be more on top of the ball. So you change things subconsciously because you're used to doing that. You're good at doing that. You're a major league player. So that's what happened to me. It didn't help that it was a lockout year of 3 weeks of spring training. Couldn't get a lot of feedback. Had to just kind of roll with it. That was not the best time to do stuff like that anyways. But that is what happens. That's why splitters, I think, have been dangerous. That's what the narrative has been around them for the 100 years, right? People are like, you hurt yourself throwing splitters, because the common knowledge was you have to throw differently to throw them. They are a different pitch, but that's not necessarily. You can get splitter action without actually having to split the ball using the inside of your fingers as pressure points. Right. He's trying to get a splitter action with a deviation off of that grip that's more comfortable. And by all accounts, it seems like he's found something, but who knows? Like, when you have the other 3 pitches that are as good as they are, he just. Sometimes he'll be like, when? Just for fun? Yeah. Like, why? Why and when? We might see like a 50% usage in spring just to see. And then go from there.
Yeah.
A phase where he's trying to just make sure he's comfortable with it. And then if he doesn't love it, it just kind of goes back on the shelf for a while.
Yep.
There's I don't know if it's a new pitch, but there's a funny thing that just came out of Boston camp that Sonny Gray is throwing his breaking balls at 2,800 RPM, and he was at like 26 last year, 25, 26 last year. So I don't know that it could be a misread. These are spring training parks. One new element that is fun this spring is, I think, from what I'm gathering from a tweet that Mike Petriello put out there, is that every spring training park has Hawkeye now. So. Could it be a calibration issue, like this new Hawkeye and this new park, and that's why it's spitting out 2,800. When I've asked people about upping spin rate without spider tack, I've gotten different answers. Where some people have said, it's kind of innate, and then I've had other people. When we had the guys on, I forget the product. What was the Flex Pro Grip? Then we had the Flex Pro Grip guys on. They kind of suggested that you could increase spin rate using their product. So there has been some stuff about grip strength and spin rate. Did you ever increase your spin rate not using spider tack, Trevor May?
I did. I mean, honestly, the only place I really cared about spin rate was there was a threshold with the fastball, like just being over like 2350 for me. What meant that the ride was the most consistent. When I was above those numbers, that's when the ride was the highest, and also just like for that outing, it was just everything was up there with the so like even it could basically work through slight changes in the tilt and stuff. It wouldn't catch air because it was cutted enough, that kind of thing. And then my stuff wasn't as good when I was 2200. It just moved slightly differently. I get a little bit more drop. That's the only real reason.
And what would you do if you fell down to 2200?
I would be like, well, that sucks. I'm stuck with that. I'm stuck with that today. And then it would be like long toss, but it does come down to how much pressure you're putting on the seams. That's how you spin a fastball. Like you really gotta feel strong on that grip. And sometimes it's arm fatigue will drop your spin rate. But like my slider was always like 2,500, which is like slightly above average, which is good. And it was consistent. And then my changeup, you wanted to be slow. So I was like a low spin rate. So I didn't really care. I was just trying to get the efficiency down on that. So like it wasn't a huge deal for me. It's guys with massively high spin rates are the ones that care about spin rate. Guys are like 3,000, I'm above 3,000, so they can talk about it all the time. But outside of like curveballs and sliders to an extent, I just don't think it's as valuable. It doesn't tell you a ton. There is a level that you would like to be. It just tells you how optimized your pitch is for any other pitch type, really. So,
it's potential movement, right? Like spin, gyro sliders are right. Gyro sliders, it doesn't matter how much you spin that. You're trying to almost have zero. You're trying to do 0-0. You're trying to not have movement. But, Sonny's throwing a sweeper. So if he is up 200 RPM, there is more potential movement. He could be
big
throwing
breaking
20s.
Balls, spin rates correlate with much, much more strongly. But yeah, grip strength. I think grip strength's massive. And I think we're very early on the grip strength and the grip where pressure is on the ball research. Like we're really you reminded me too, I got to pick up one of those pro grips because I did one. They're fascinating. My hands it was really hard for me because my hands are in the middle size and we couldn't find the right. It looks like you're playing a trumpet. You're on you look like Wolverine.
Yeah, we
my
modeled
finger
it
kept
at
slipping, and he's like, "Dude, what is going on?" He's like, "Your hands are all too big and too small at the same time. I don't know what's happening." So it's interesting, but they're actually really available. I kind of want to get some of the guys I work with on one just to see what kind of information we can get.
It's interesting because you've talked about working with some, I think, high school and college pitchers lately, and pitch design is obviously really hitting this new level. And you brought this up in our meeting, and I think it's a really fascinating part of the conversation with everyone showing up with new toys this time of year. Pitch design for the sake of what? Like the purpose, the intent, right? And I think, what are you finding working with some younger pitchers right now where there might be a little bit of a divide between completely purposeful new pitches and just pitches that move a certain way or look a certain way because they are supposed to move or look a certain way?
Yeah, the term being thrown around all the time is shapes. You're going to see tweets of facilities and stuff. Like, we've been working on pitch shapes. We're working on getting good shapes. It's a good shape. Like guys sitting behind. I see videos like this all the time. Guys sitting behind, like, that's the right shape. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But what I'm seeing is a lot of it's seeing as a single dimension the thing that is most important, because TrackMans are now really accessible to a lot of facilities have them. At least one. Young guys can get on and they go, oh, they're starting to see cool things. I remember growing up, just having a gun on us was awesome. And it completely changed mentally what we were trying to do. I'm just trying to throw hard now. And now that's normal. And it's become part of the psyche that when you're getting this feedback, you naturally want to see what is the high number. What is the highest number I can hit? What's my peak? What's my PR? And
that's
I think
the easiest to communicate, right? Too. It's like, oh, you want to get 20s, you want to get 16s.
What's normal? What's good? What do big leaguers do? And that there is value to I have the ability to throw a pitch that a big leaguer can throw in a way that a big leaguer can throw, even though you're not throwing a big league ball. And when I go throw big league balls and my sweeper is -19, they're what, you can't get -20? I'm like, hey, hold this ball real quick. They're like, where are the seams? I'm like, exactly. I'm better than you. You guys are using your stupid diamond balls with the half-inch laces,
seams.
right? Which is those things are supposed to break. Anyway, that there becomes an obsession with it. But then you're like, okay, you throw a sinker and a straight changeup and then a huge sweeper. do you have a tunnel at all? Because the tunnel is the best deception there is. Like, if you can tunnel your pitches really, really well, your ability to deceive a hitter and for them to get terrible swings is better than if you just throw a bunch of nasty pitches that are all distinct from each other from different angles and stuff. Like, that they need to work together. Your pitches need to move a lot, but sometimes you need to rein them in so that they align with the stuff you throw better. And that's an advanced thing. I think that a lot of guys in high school, if they get that understanding, like, oh, I don't need to have the nastiest pitch on the planet. I just need it to work with, I want it to be nasty, but like, it doesn't need to be as far as I can get it to go all the time and sacrifice other things for that. But there's one little thing that's part of this that I get, and it's hard to communicate. The way that you get recruited and seen now and also drafted, the draft's way smaller. Like, guys are getting signed to independent ball is a real path, that more so than it was before, to get into professional baseball. And to get that job, you have to send them your CSV file and some video. Yeah. And so having a peak day, like in February, is in your best interest to get signed. And so, like, guys can't, like, ramp up it right now. Like, I have a couple guys right now that are like, I can't get my best shapes. I'm like, first of all, you don't need your best shapes right now because you're not competing. But also, like, you don't need what is the best shape. And I'm starting to have that conversation. And they're looking at me like, I've never thought of this before. So it's fascinating because in pro ball, I think this is known. But there's lots of young big leaguers who are like, I don't get it. Like, my sweeper moves 25 inches. And but no one swings at it. And when I do throw it, it's getting hit. I'm like, probably because it looks different the moment it's out of your hand.
That makes me think of so many things. Gosh, I mean, one thing that makes me really think of is Bryce Miller. We've talked about a lot on this podcast. The Mariners found the sweeper. That was early stuff, research, and they found that the sweeper was undervalued. So they taught it to everybody. They taught it to Logan Gilbert. He comes up. He's like, I can't command this pitch. Yeah, I'm getting 20s or whatever, but I can't command it, so he drops the sweeper. Bryce Miller comes up, he's throwing a sweeper. Guess what? The release point is like 6 inches different, and no hitter swung at his sweeper, and he couldn't put it in the zone because it's a big shape. The bigger shapes are harder to command. I looked at the biggest discrepancy between stuff numbers and pitch type values. And what I found were, like Ryan Pepio's four seam with a 94 location plus. I basically found that most of the high stuff rated pitches that didn't do well were bad command. There was bad command with him, and a lot of the other ones were sweepers. That just got turfed in the new model update. So that's one thing I think about. But so you have to command the pitch first of all, and then you have to be able to put it into context of the rest of your arsenal. And the context that I really think about is, one number that everyone's comfortable with is ride, is like the vertical movement on their four seam, and everyone's got a number that they've what is it? What is the number? I don't know TrackMan. I don't speak TrackMan that well. Is it 20s?
20.
What do you want? 20. Everyone wants 20 ride on the four seam. Well, let me tell you, the number one starting pitcher last year in ride was Nick Pivetta, and the stuff plus on his pitch was 96, suggesting that it was an average pitch. How are these two things true? Because the context here is your arm slot. And I would rather, if I was working with a young pitcher, I think one of the first things I would do is just, is this your arm slot? Do you feel comfortable in this arm slot? Now that is the beginning of our context. That is the beginning of our conversation. If you're over the top, can we find something that has some sink, has some run? That's more important because you're going to get ride if you're over the top, And, I don't need you to be chasing 22s and 23s. It's maybe more important to you to find something else that deviates from expected outcomes.
Hunter Brown.
Yeah. Hunter Brown is, has a good slot for ride, had a good four seam. It never did well until he added the two seam to it, Frankie Montas. Same thing. He was a four-seam guy. He found a seam-shifted wake sinker that went off of that, and that was, once he added that, people were like, "Oh, that I don't expect that. You're an Iron Mike over the topper, and all of a sudden you've got something with run. What the heck is this thing?" So, that's something I think about, and I think maybe one of the best ways to show it is Johan Oviedo. And we can throw this chart up that shows Johan Oviedo's movement from 2023 before TJ surgery, and then his movement after. So his movement after in 2025, his fastball moves exactly like league average. And you'd say, because the Savant picture has a little red section where it's like, this is league average. And you're like, dude, that's not a good fastball. That's exactly dead zone. Except the median arm angle in baseball is 37 degrees. He, after surgery, dropped his arm angle to 26 degrees and somehow threw an average four seam from this new low arm angle. So he's 10 degrees lower than usual, but he's throwing a pitch that's high up in the air. The way he did it, seam shifted wake. And now this is another thing that I would talk about with kids. I don't want you manipulating the ball. I want you to change the ball, change where you're touching it, change the grips. I want you to change those. I don't want you thinking a different release point. Everything I want you to come out with, same release point, and use the seams to make it do different things. So normally you throw your four seam across the seams like this. But now let's take this and let's say, well, you're a 30-degree arm angle, right? So instead of this gives you ride because it cuts through the air and the seams give you ride based on the Magnus effect, right? But if you're a 30-degree arm angle down here, 26-degree arm angle, you're spinning through the air like this. Now that's not going to cut through the air and give you four seam movement. That's why you get sinkerish movement. You don't get ride. Well, what he did, and I checked with some sources on this, is he harnessed seam shifted wake to get his four seam to go up. What do you want if you want it to go up with seam shifted wake? You want the seams to gather at the top of the ball. So I'm guessing here a little bit because I couldn't find any grips, but what I'm guessing is he went along he wants the ball up here like this. So he went into the horseshoe and he's holding maybe the ball like this because you've got the seams up here at the top. Now when you release this, the seams are going to gather at the top. You can see these seams up here are always on. And those seams gathering at the top will give the ball ride. He got 5 inches more ride after surgery, and I'm sure that he used seam shifted wake. I'm not exactly sure what he did, but the process for an amateur, without using these crazy terms, can be to, instead of thinking 20s, think, well, my arm slot's down here in the 20s. Think that, if I get 13s or 14s, that's great. And if I do it without manipulating the ball or my hand that much, if I just do it by moving the grip around, then that's, I think, a good process, and that's decent results. And you won't wow anybody on social media with your 20s. But if the right person is looking at your CSV, they'll like it.
Yeah, looking at your CSV. You nailed it. There's also this is just a little side thing, like how hard you throw reduces what you need for ride, because literally the ball gets there earlier, so it doesn't have time to drop. So you're just going to get, even though your ride number is not going to be kicked way up, it's going to look better. If you have crazy long extension, that's going to lower your release height, which I did. I was a really tall guy, but then I got so far out there that I was low to the ground when I threw the ball, which then when you throw top of zone, you get another inch or two in ride you don't need, because it seems like it's higher because you're releasing it from a lower, it's staying up more because it seems like you're coming up to them. There's an angle coming up, which is not, it's subverting their expectations, especially if you're big and tall, never faced you before, you're standing up really tall like me, and then suddenly it's a low angle and then it's up again. Like this was a deception thing going. So everything you're mentioning is like, they make assumptions, hitters there, that is, based on the arm slot, because there's just natural ways. Guy throws sidearm, it's probably going to run because the ball's spinning sideways. Like a guy throws straight over the top, it's probably going to ride because they've hit off an iron mic, one of the oldest pitching machine that exists. Every place has them because they're still just super. They're still the best pitching machine there is because they don't break. We just bought one for a place I'm working out too, so that's why I'm obsessed with them right now. But like you can get you make assumptions based on, if the person releases this pitch from that angle, it's probably going to move this way. And then if you're able to design a pitch for it to move differently, which seam shifted wake has unlocked. Like it has just unlocked that. That's why people who throw supinated, it spins kind of sideways, almost like a slow cutter kind of look. Every pitch you throw is like that. And then suddenly you throw a changeup, which I did, and then it goes the other way. It doesn't go with the break, it goes away from it. Guys were like, what is that? And that's It's just a new part of physics outside the Magnus effect. We knew what ride was. We didn't know how to do the opposite of ride, and that's what seam shifted wake does. It breaks it. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, you said the seams gathering at the top of the ball. What that does is when seams gather somewhere, that means it can cut through the air well. The idea is to get seams to gather on one side so it can cut almost like a drill. I think of it as like a drill bit through the air. And then the other side of the ball needs to create, the seams need to not gather. So like it creates this big bowl that can catch air.
It goes towards the gathering.
Yes, you want air to be caught on one side and then the other side to be able to cut the air well. That's how you can guarantee it's going to move in that direction, which in this case, Oviedo's spins sideways, but it stays up because there's air underneath the ball. So people think it's going to run into him. As a righty facing a righty, think you're going to run into him, and it's just staying up and not running very much because of a weird effect of air. Now, will that work very well in Colorado? No. It doesn't work in Colorado. That stuff does not
Nothing
work.
works in Colorado. Trevor, I got another question for you. I might be dropping this on you, but we had a little bit in the rundown. But one of the new pitches, we're talking about new pitch types, and I think this is really interesting. You know, Oviedo's like spin base, like his spin axis didn't change much, but his observed spin axis changed 45 degrees. So this is seam shifted wake. But here's a pitch I want to ask you about. Let's throw this up. So. Redson 4 gets gets some credit for this because he pointed out that Johan throws this pitch. So throw this up on. This is Woodruff, Patrick, Priester, and Koenig. They all throw a high ride cutter. Now I also threw Cade Horton and Justin Steele on there because they throw the cut ride fastball, and I never made this connection before just recently. I think they're the same pitch. So the high ride cutter and the cut ride fastball both live, you know, on the pitch movement chart in a very similar place, which is 12-0. You know, it's not a cutter. Cutters drop more than that, and it's not a four seam because four seamers have more arm side movement. And so all of these guys, the Brewers and the Cubs, you know, they are really targeting this pitch. What does that pitch mean to you? Like how could they do that? What are they doing? Because that's not a gyro slider. Gyro slider is like hold it in a slider grip, but throw it like a fastball, right? Let me just guess. And a cutter is hold it in the cutter grip and throw it like a fastball. How are they getting more ride, but still getting cut? Do you have any idea? Have you ever fooled around? Have you ever thrown a pitch that's like 12-0 or anything like that?
No, I tried though. I tried before,
okay.
And So, one, it starts with what you do naturally. So there's a reason, for example, I'm looking at this, that Quinn Priester, the sinker it comes down to semantics, what they've done for a long time too. So like he's a sinker guy. So like the variation of that, he's throwing a four seam that just cuts. But it's the exact same. I'm looking at it's exactly the same as Horton and Steele. Like exactly.
It is. It really is, and it's called a cutter on his page.
And they could be calling it a cutter to distinguish it in a certain way, so that they can. It's just a better way to communicate game plan and stuff. So sometimes this just happens, but I always think about it this way: every pitch type we can set them on like a plot that creates a little spectrum. We go like four seam fastball and cutter. Cutter is to the right, four seam fastball to the left, and then you can plot something somewhere in there that is somewhere in between to create a riding four seam cutter or a cutting four seam riding fastball, whatever you want to call it. It's basically where they're coming, whichever direction they naturally are coming from, and that's the adjustment they're making, and that's why they call it something different. So like if Corbin Burns, for example, he throws his cutter. That's what his four seam was. It just cut a little bit less, and they're like, hey, lean more into the cut instead of trying to make it ride, because he was trying to find a ride. He threw 99, and it kept straightening out and was getting crushed. And then they're like, no, we want you to actually lean more into the let it cut and find that sweet spot. So he's like, okay, I'll throw 96 and then just have it cut more and still ride and thumbs up. So, like, now he throws a cutter, but it's just his four seam. He just adjusted it. So, like, that's
what do you think those adjustments are? Just slight grip or pressure? Or?
Sometimes it's just in your mind. You're like, stop trying to line this up. They're like, just lean into, like, letting it cut, and then they just stay through it. So a lot of guys are like, right at the end, they'll turn their hand just to try to straighten it out a little bit more. They're like, stop doing that. And sometimes it's just an intent thing in your head, and then it fixes itself. By all accounts, that's what happened with Corbin Burns. It was as simple as, like, lean into your cutter. And he's like, okay, and then it was fixed. Like just lean into it. Stop trying to fix it, because he was trying to fix it the whole time, and it became a strength, not a weakness anymore. So like that's what we're seeing here with Woodruff and with Patrick. They do one of the two naturally, and they're just slightly adjusting it and thinking go towards the other thing. I'm trying to even see like Patrick, for example. He throws a slider, kind of. Like the cutter's more comfortable. And so they're like, this is cutter instead of a slider. We're not going to throw a slider. Maybe they moved towards the cutter, and he just found a sweet spot where it was different
are these
enough.
pitches even all used the same? Because they could be used as breaking balls. They could be used as fastballs. It's a fascinating pitch to me.
That it becomes a wrinkle for some guys. But one thing that has happened, and this happened last year a lot, the two fastballs idea, that's different from a lot of people. But you want something that goes both ways, and especially righties that throw sinkers who can't get lefties out. They want cutters, and they want them to stay up and in. So like that became the thing. Just blow guys up, lefties up and in with the fastball or with a cutter. The best way to do that and have it ride too. So if they could do it, they do it.
Do you think it's just like if you see a pitcher throw this type of pitch, you automatically like them a little more?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm sorry if you can hear this in the background. I don't know what's happening. Someone seems to be
not horrible, but I can hear it. Yeah.
Directly above me, someone is drilling something, and they didn't tell me. So great. So yeah, I would look at this and say that tells me that you have that ability to not only cut the ball and maintain kind of the stuff on it, but maybe there's even a farther you can go, and you're covering the top of the zone. I mean, if you could throw a sinker, a four seam, and a cutter, and just stay in the top rail and have them move in different ways, which Justin Steele, by all accounts, if you look at Steele and Han Horton, they have like. The range of horizontal is like, it goes from cutting to running a little bit. And they're able to kind of, and that could be natural. I know for a fact, though, with Steele, I've asked him, he's like, he's one of those guys who has like one grip for every pitch he throws. And he's just like, if I'm like, I need this to be a little bit bigger, I just manipulate it because he has that's the way he's thought about pitching his whole life. And so some guys
that's
can
not
do
necessarily,
that.
Not necessarily how I teach it. But I mean, I do think that when I look at this group, they throw a lot of fastballs. Woodruff, Patrick, Priester, Horton, Steele, they throw a lot of fastballs, but they seem to, show feel, fastball feel. It reminds me like almost the patron saint of this group is maybe Lance Lynn or something. It's just like the guy who had a ton of fastballs, had good command of them, and maybe surprised people because his secondary stuff was never that good. So when I go back to Oviedo, I say, well, this fastball doesn't command it that well, but it's a very interesting fastball profile. His secondaries aren't that good. I struggle what to do with this type of pitcher, and I've, all these guys are a little bit lower in the rankings, in my rankings, maybe than other people would expect. Maybe I'm wrong about this type of pitcher. Maybe there's something interesting about if you have a really good fastball, you have a really good fastball profile, or if you have three fastballs, like, maybe I'm just being a basic B and like looking for the big shapes. Dude, this comes back. Like maybe I'm just like, where's your big shape, Oviedo? Where's your big... I want him to have a sweeper this spring. That's what I would love him to have, but that's something I'd be watching for. But maybe I should be watching for, hey, which guys are throwing these new high ride cutters or
maybe
ride fastballs?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on. Like, I think shape's the most valuable for potential. Like you can do that. We can do that. Now, is there a version that works within your arsenal? But like, if you can't make a good shape, then you're less likely to try it. Like, so checking to see if that shape is there is great, and then you tailor it, awesome. But you want to see what you have to work with. So I think that shapes do go, like, tell you potentially this guy could have a bunch of weapons. Now we can develop him. So if you're going to send the CSV to a pro team, the bigger numbers will peak. They'll be like, oh, there's a whole bunch of clay here to work with, and that is in your best interest. But that switch has to be flipped at some point. Like you have to compete,
being competitive.
with it. Yeah, you have to be able to compete with it. You have to know that that's both going to be part of it. Because when you go out there, like, I have all these shapes. What's going on? Like there's two modes. Like say it's modal. Are we competing? Or are we paying attention to the detail when we practice? You got to do both. You can't just do one and then expect the other one to take care of itself.
I talked to a coach recently who said that he was sort of bemoaning the minor league coaching experience and said that too much of it right now is metric based in a bad way, where it's just like, hey, we're coaching these shapes up, it's very much what you're talking about, and then not really considering how it all fits together, and too much has to be done at the major league level. in terms of, and that's something we see from young starting pitchers in particular. I think that right now it's a real hard for a young starting pitcher to land and be dominant right away. We've seen a lot of people really struggle right out the gate because, maybe they've been like Bryce Miller throwing a sweeper that looked great in the metrics, but wasn't actually going to help them compete at the major league level. So, Jason Collette just sent me a file of new pitches, and I'm scanning it really quickly to consider like which one of these is really interesting to me. Mike Soroka throwing a cutter and a sweeper along with his slurve. That'd be interesting. That's a guy who, like Trevor, what you're saying is he's shown us that he has this big shape. That's a very interesting shape. Can he now put together more pieces around it? Because I think, Soroka, he's all about that slurve. Really, no other pitch has been that good by any model or metric. So him throwing a 2 or 3 other breaking balls would be really interesting. Gavin Williams throwing a sinker this spring would be pretty interesting because he has the cutter, he has the four seam. Maybe he becomes this fastball guy. Trey Savage throwing a curveball with glove side movement would be interesting because he's got nothing that goes glove side. So those are all ones that sort of jump off the page when I'm looking at it.
Soroka, I think, is interesting because I'm just looking at his overall movement profile, and of course the slurve as a righty drops down and away as you'd expect, but everything else he throws rides up and goes in on right-handed hitters. There's nothing near the middle, so that's where you could see that cutter would actually fill a pretty large gap on his actual pitch constellation.
And with Williams, you could see how it would spread out that fastball constellation, just like you're saying.
Yeah, so interesting adjustments there. I did see Dylan Cease's name on the rundown, trying to get some consistency with his changeup. He scrapped it in May of last year. The long-term lefty-righty splits for Dylan Cease going to highlight the need for something like that, a third pitch that will help him against lefties. It's a 418 career FIP against lefties, 318 against righties, 135 whip against lefties, 118 against righties. Do you think something will be different this time around for Dylan Cease where he can find a little more consistency against hitters on the opposite side?
I mean, I think he's in the right place. They're pretty good at splitters and changeups in Toronto. So he was doing something weird where he was throwing a splitter, but he must have been babying it with his arm or something because he was throwing it real slow. And that didn't make any sense to me. I think someone needs to get in his ear and be like, throw this same grip, but just throw it hard and throw it like your fastball and don't worry about the shapes, don't make it look good. It's just supposed to look like a fastball coming out of your arm and then do something different. So I don't know if but I love Ruben Niebla, so I'm not suggesting he's gotten bad pitching coaching, but there's been something missing with his changeup usage in the past or the shapes or whatever he's done with it.
Yeah, I think we've had enough conversations about it where sometimes it's just getting the right teammate, right coaches, right tweak that finally makes something take off like that, right? Maybe that'll actually happen this time around for Dylan Cease. The last sort of question we had for today is, who are you watching closely this spring? We're always on the lookout for new pitches, adjustments, best shape of his life, all that kind of stuff gets our attention. And then we want to actually see what happens when there's a game sort of environment, even though the game environments are not like regular season games. I'll throw Max Meyer's name back out there, guys, because he had season-ending hip surgery. It was a labrum repair in his hip last July, hit the IL with an impingement about a month before that, and that was right on the heels of a stretch where he stopped pitching really well. Last season, we saw Meyer add a couple of pitches. He added a sweeper to go along with a gyro slider, throws the fastball at 95, and he doesn't throw it a ton. I think it's a somewhat ordinary 95-mile-an-hour fastball, but mixes in sinkers and changeups. He was off to a great start last year, too. 41-7 strikeout to walk in 30 innings pitched. That included a 14K performance against the Reds. And I think he clearly, to me, is the number 3 starter in that rotation behind Sandy Alcantara and Yuri Perez as long as he's healthy. So Max Meyer is one of those guys that I just want to see a healthy version of him this spring. And I think he actually looks like a little bit of a post-hype sleeper, a guy that, because of the injuries, has graduated from prospect lists, but is somewhat forgotten about because he's just not getting that same hype anymore.
That's a good one.
I like that too, yeah.
I'm interested in Edward Cabrera and Cade Horton. I'm going to use just 2 because, Pacoda came out and has the Cubs as the top team in their division. And Edward Cabrera is coming off of injury, but he's also made a lot of changes, and yet the fastball got hit hard last year, and so I'm fascinated to see what the Cubs' spin on this situation will be. Will they just reduce the number of fastballs he throws? Will they try to get him to throw more four-seamers to kind of have separation, have two fastballs? I'm interested to see how his health is. With Cade Horton, he made some strides with the curveball last year. Is he going to strike more people out? Those two guys, I think, are of huge import to this Cubs team because, Steele's going to come back and hopefully he joins at the top. But, guys like Boyd and Tyon and Shota, I think they're more get you there guys. And so if this is a team that's going to win the division and take down the Brewers who've been so good, I think Edward Cabrera or Cade Horton have to kind of step forward. So there's a huge import there for fantasy owners in terms of these are affordable guys that, I could see both of them jumping into acedom. I don't know. It's possible that both of those guys or one of those guys is top 25 pitcher next year. It doesn't take that much. It takes a few more strikeouts from Cade Horton, and it takes a year of health from Edward Cabrera. So it's important for fantasy and it's important for the Cubs because this is not a great pitching staff. This is a great lineup, a great position player core, and it could become a much better pitching staff if those two guys take a step forward.
Those good ones. I'm going to try to keep this simple because I'm sure drilling will start up again any moment. I was going to keep it easy and just say, love to see if Crochet can just be like, okay, I want to beat Scooble out for this Cy Young and I need to do a changeup. But I want to see Spencer Strider back after a year to let his arm fully bounce back. A lot of times is what happens with Tommy John. And then how then does he use his changeup with his velocity coming back a little bit? We know he loves his slider and he loves his four seam, but he's a two-pitch pitcher a lot. Last year, he relied on his changeup a lot and got a lot of reps with it. Was struggling to find the feel for it, but I think that's going to unlock him long term. So I want to see if he sticks with trying to make that a weapon as his stuff comes back, because it will. Is he going to throw 100 every pitch again? Probably not, but he's going to be high 90s. He's gonna be up there in velocity again. It's just the way he pitches. So I want to see if there's more iterations, if there's a different seam shifted situation he's trying to do, if he tries to add a splitter, whatever it is. But I'm sure he's going to keep trying stuff. That is what he's known for. So I want to see how the changeup comes together for him because, with no Schwellenbach, who was becoming a true stud there, they're going to need stuff from him and a team that underperformed big time last year. Has all the still young core back, everyone's getting paid. They gotta bounce back again. They can't struggle again this year.
Yeah, I think it's similar to the Horton and Cabrera thing, where it's this is both fantasy and real life importance. The Braves, Sale is there. It's a question of is it 130 or is it 160 innings? That sort of deal. But Sale's going to be there in terms of talent, and the rest of the rotation is one big question mark.
Yeah, huge if they can get Spencer Strider back closer to the pre-recent elbow surgery version that we saw earlier in his career. We are going to go before that drilling resumes. I think it does give a little bit of a sci-fi vibe when we're talking about, pitch design and shapes and different things. So maybe the ambiance ends up playing just fine. It didn't come through it had to be really loud on Trevor's side. I think it was actually okay for the rest of us.
Yeah, it sucked. It sucks in here. And I'm to the point where I'm going to walk over to the next door and be like, seriously? So.
All right. Well, on that note, join the Discord if you haven't done so already. Details to sign up for our listener league are still in there. Get in on that before the end of the weekend because those drafts get underway on Monday afternoon.
Yeah, Trevor, you could get in on that.
Good.
No
Maybe.
Cost. 12 team.
It's
You're
free.
And you don't have to do any lineup haggling during the season.
No pickups.
You have to set your lineups.
Just change your lineups. Yep. That's all you got to do. So that's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Friday.
Thanks for listening.